finalizing a route here.
Pylons, traffic cones.
I said pylons because somebody's talking about my orange shoes and said, oh, those are really cool. And I thought they're like traffic cones to me.
It's time to roll.
I start the rollout because you can see on the time here it says 7:40. Well, we started. Those guys are still standing under the awning. There's no reason for that. We've already discussed the route. It's time to go. So I'm rolling because we get up very early. We get ready to meet. We'll ride up here to meet these guys. And unless it's necessary, there's no reason for us to stand around the parking lot 10, 15 minutes after the start time. You can give people like a 5-minute buffer, you know, and Dan and I chatted about it. Some people come in, they get there right at 7:30. Well, we're supposed to leave at 7:30. So unless you're riding there, you need to show up before 7:30 so you can get ready and to leave at 7:30. So Dan, you can see Dan and I are rolling. And I don't see the rest of the guys yet. But it's just to egg them on instead of just standing there, and before you know it, it'll be 7:45 before we start going. It just eats into the day. I've got a small window to ride. I don't want to stand around. I want my moving time to be very close to my elapsed time. You guys know what I mean. On this ride, Paul and I left Northampton. Rain was in the forecast. It was supposed to come around 10 o'clock. So we rode to the woodlands. We picked up Team RR, went down Research Forest to Fish Creek. The plan was to go out to Taco Corner and just come back like an out and back. We got to Honea. There was a lot of play there. Real hard riding. Went down 105 to Taco Corner and then headed back because we checked the radar and rain was coming in. So once we got back around Raven Chapel, we let the group go because of all the spray since they didn't have mud guards. So Paul, myself, and Alan stayed together back in town. We had to stop at an Exxon because there was so much lightning and thunder for the storm to pass. And once it passed, we went back to Northampton. So it was an epic ride, some heavy rains, and I hope you enjoy the clips. Dan's talking about the channel.
He was from a ride a couple of weeks ago. You said you were getting set up for some Grand Fondo coming out?
There is
Which one?
it's a Grand Fondo called the Heroes Ride. Middle of October. It starts in Conroe. We did it last year. They do it for the officers, the sheriffs.
Yeah.
Heroes Ride. Just go Heroes Ride. Online you find it.
And it's the middle of October.
Yeah, it's around the 13th. I think the 13th is a Saturday. Yeah, but the 6th is the first Saturday.
Okay.
The 13th is the Grand Fondo. I asked Paul about it. Paul H. He knows about it. We did it last year, and it was a lot of fun. It's like they have a 72-mile option. Goes out 1097. Same roads we play on.
This is the ride that we did
3083.
a year ago with Paul and I. Paulie Longa was not well.
Pieces of it. But it starts at the Montgomery County Fairgrounds or something like that.
Yeah.
And it heads out. You have 3
So
options.
we're planning on doing the Heroes Ride this year for the second
I did it for the
time.
first time last year.
Good ride.
Yeah. Yeah, all of that. You have a meal when you get back.
So Dan's asking about it
Well
because
supported.
it's a local ride. It's not far from our area. That's Alan. Alan joined us
it's like
this morning.
going to be one every Saturday. You get your pick. I believe they have postponed the one you guys were talking about was postponed because of the weather.
Right.
There's a lot of Grand
That's another one
Fondos
that's
this
coming out
month
late October.
because the
Yeah.
weather's cooler.
Yeah.
So that's when they
And there's
tend
a
to
tour de
hold
Grue
more stuff down
Paul
here.
H was telling me about. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah.
He's talking about a ride called the
Yeah.
Tour de Grue as an area near New Braunfels. And I don't know if we're going to do that one, but so far we're going to do the Heroes Ride. You got to pick your Grand Fondos. The logistics and the expense adds up if you do too many close together because they're averaging $40 plus for each event now. Some of them are more ridiculously priced, like the MS 150. If you don't get a lot of donation, it'll cost you a minimum of $400. It just gets out of hand in some cases. You know, cycling is expensive enough. I don't want it to be like golf where every time you get on your bike you're paying fees.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You guys decide to ride? Get out here to ride. I sit around in crust pizza parking lot. Do this. As MJ says, let's do this.
Yeah, because I don't know why we're sitting there. We'd already talked about the route. It's time to go. You need to encourage people to be on time. Riding time is scarce. For me, I like to go out early, get back early. You know, instead of spending the whole day out there. It's done. You got the day in front of you to do other things. Those are the shoes the guys were complimenting me on. And I told them they look like traffic cones. On a day like this, you know, overcast, rain in the forecast. That's Michael back there. So we didn't have a big turnout today, but we had enough riders to get a good ride in. Paul's got this rear view thing on the gimbal down now that we discussed. That's a nice view.
Are you? I'm good. Yesterday I would have lost money on betting on the weather with his car. It's all good.
So since I knew it was gonna rain, I put my shoe covers in my pocket. It's on my right pocket.
Yeah.
So that's if the rain starts, I can just slip them on. Paul brought his as well.
Yeah. The last time I checked, it was sure that it was going to rain at 8.
And they're talking about the weather here. And even if those shoe covers, some of them, they're not gonna keep your feet completely 100% dry, but they might be slightly damp, but not soaking wet. And in addition, they keep any kind of road spray, because you know it was raining so much on this ride. When some of the cars would go by, they were lifting water, so you'll clean up when you get back. You just peel them off. You don't have to worry about your shoes picking up anything from the road. So overall, it's just better to have them. You know, in super heavy rain, nothing will keep your feet completely dry. And the ones we have, they're really lightweight. The ones I carried with me, that's easy to put in your pocket. But I like to have them covered because if you don't, the shoes are made to be very breathable and water easily gets in. So with those covers on there, it covers all the vent holes that are on top of your shoes. And those shoes I'm wearing are not leather. They're made out of some vinyl or some man-made material. So that's always great in the rain. It's almost like microfiber mixed with vinyl. I just stay on the road because we have 2 lanes. I don't use that shoulder, and I've talked about it in other rides. There's a lot of mud and dirt, and that's no reason not to use the lane, because at the corners the shoulder gets narrower. Then they have to come over anyway. So I just stay on the road. Once we got going, the ride was quick. I mean, everybody was ready to ride. So.
Oh, that's where you went to get? Yeah.
Sometimes people, it's hard to get them started out of their parking lot. So we're heading up to 2978, which becomes Fish Creek Thoroughfare. We're gonna go north. The plan is to go to Taco Corner, then check the radar. I was clipped in, but my cleat felt really weird, so I unclipped and put it back in. It was almost like it was not quite engaged properly, almost like one side of it was and the other wasn't. So that's why I just took it out and put it back in. It felt fine. Alan on the right on his Cervelo P5. Those of you who are familiar with the channel, I did a review of that time trial bike. Alan prefers this time trial bike because he says when he's in the time trialing position, it releases the pressure on his back. He has a degenerative disc in his back, and so he likes the time trial position. It's like it releases whatever compression he has from other activities, you know. So I'm kind of doing a little balancing here because there's not that many cars coming and we're going right. The guys are like going really slow. I think in a little bit I'll go around, check for cars, go around. So right on the right here, that's a bunch of cyclists. It's a group. I don't know who they are. They're heading out. You can see they're coming out and we're going straight. They end up merging into our group. You're not going to see too many of them on camera, but one of their, I guess, stronger riders he basically ends up abandoning them and joining our group. You will see him in a little while after the intersection here. He's wearing a pink jersey. I think he liked our pace better. So, and that may have been what probably ends up causing a confusion further down the road that I would illustrate, where some people said left and they were going, and we always go straight after the overpass, and somebody yelled left, does not go left, causes Paul to slow down thinking we're going to turn left, which almost caused he and Dan to collide. I mean, it was close. You don't really see it that well on camera, but I did a freeze frame. But it basically caused enough confusion that can cause a problem in a group. And I will point out, and maybe that's where it came from, because somebody in the back yelled left, and I don't think it was somebody in our group, but then one of our group members passed that message on, but did not respond to it, meaning he said left but went straight. You know, so you'll see it. See Alan stretching his back there. I think with Alan it comes and goes sometimes depending on what's going on. His back will tighten up just from normal life stuff. And then so when he comes to ride, he said he prefers this time trial bike because he gets to lay down and it eases the tightness. Yeah, I missed the clip there, so I went ahead and clip back in. Get through this intersection. A lot of times if that happens to you, some of these lights are short. Just go ahead and pedal with the leg that's clipped in. Keep the other one lightly on there. Just pedal one leg and get through the intersection. Don't stay in the middle trying to clip back in if it's taking you too much time. So on this day, the wind was heaviest from the right and light behind us right now, but it was mostly from the east, which is on our right. There's been a few people, a few legends on the channel asking, and I replied to them, but I don't know if they got the gist of what I was saying. Some of them asked, how do you tell the direction of the wind? Well, it's blowing in your face. It's coming from in front. If it's blowing from the side, I mean, when you're out there, you just have to pay attention to where you feel the wind coming from. And so I had to think about what kind of reply to give them, because really, I even added that you can look at the flags, or, you know, you start with the weather report, of course. They will tell you whether the wind is coming from southwest or so forth. And you kind of start with that, because that's your gauge. And if you have your north, south, east, west directions down, then you kind of expect it to come from that direction. If you don't have the north, south, east, west direction, some people don't really, you know, relate to that very well. Look at the flag on the right here. So for the most part, you can see it just kind of swirling around, and you see it straight in that direction. So that means wind's coming from your left at this moment. But by looking at the fact that that flag was not very straight or focused, that means the winds are light, and usually early in the morning that kind of tells you. So you're not always going to find flags, but you just do it by where you feel the wind coming from, and that's how you find the draft. And I think that may be why they were asking because they related to the video about, following your wheel and so forth. So when you're riding, you will be able to tell when you're in a position where you're catching wind or the wind's hitting you or you're not. I pull off the front here, and then Mark ends up telling me it's going to take you a while to get back in because it ends up being that group we passed, they're behind us. I'm drifting back looking for gaps. There are none. We have a long line of riders back there. I don't go all the way to the back. I find a gap about a couple of riders behind Paul. Paul's here with the camera behind Alan, and I slip in there. And then in a little while, I end up coming back to the front. You will see shortly. Because what ends up happening is, even though the line is very long, I don't know the skills of all those riders back there, and I don't want to be way behind per se for too long. So I just want to be kind of in the middle of the pack where possible. So you see Alan's on his barge, so he left a large gap between him and Paul M up there. There are a lot of groups that will not allow you to do what he's doing, but what Alan's doing here is making sure he has about maybe a bike length or a half to the guy in front. The reason he's doing it is because, like I mentioned about his back, he feels most comfortable in that position since he's having challenges with his back today. He doesn't always have the tightness every day, but it's bothering him today, and that's why you see him do that. But when the riding really picks up, I mean, right now we're just rolling out. When it really picks up, he'll get on the handles that you see on the side there. That's what he uses once the group gets really tight. Yeah, he's on. That's what he is. So when he gets there, he'll get closer like that. He'll get closer. When he gets on those bars, he gives himself more room, similar to what Victor does. I think that's John at the front pulling right now, and then Paul Moore is behind him. The road goes up just slightly here. These little rises, whether it's 1%, 0.7, whatever, I'm still getting a few people that will come. There was some guy that was saying, because my description said we have rolling hills and narrated group ride and so forth, so he cut and pasted it in there and said, where's the hills? And I was tempted to say, stop by, we'll take you out and show you, because his point, well, I guess he's a lightweight rider. This is where I come up in front of Paul here. I moved from the back. I didn't want to be way back. I just came up in front of Paul here. But what I was trying to say was that people like to make comments when you talk about hills as if to say there is a certain gradient that qualifies a hill as a hill. And it just shows their inexperience, because that's why we have gears. A hill is a hill. A 1% hill in a 5317 is a hill. It's the gearing and the effort that makes the difference. I always say that. Why do you think people get dropped on a flat road? It's a flat road. Why do you think they're getting dropped? Because of the effort. That's what matters. So people like to say, oh, that's not a hill. It doesn't need to be 20% to be a hill. In the right gear, you get dropped on a 1% climb. So when they say stuff like that, it tells me they haven't been riding, they're not riders, they're new, they're just getting into it, and they're acting like they know. That's why I always make the comment, it's better to say, why are you doing something, as opposed to starting like you're having a discussion about a topic you don't know. Because the people who know, they can tell that you don't know what you're talking about. There is no rider that's going to tell you, oh, a 1% hill is not a hill. Well, yeah, it may not be a 20% climb, but in the right gear, yeah, you will know it's a hill. And a flat road in the right gear, you will have problems too. Why do you think small riders struggle on a flat road? All you're fighting is wind resistance, but it's quadruple the effort you need to increase a little bit of speed. Now I'm using quadruple as an example because it's an exponential increase in power that gives you more speed when you fight in the wind. That's why little guys have trouble on the flats. So don't fall for that foolishness that people like to, oh, that's not much of a hill. I got a 10% hill in my yard. So what? You got a 10% hill. I'll ride a 34, 32 on your 10% hill. What does that mean? Nothing. In the right gear, I can be at the same zone on your 10% hill. That's the point I'm trying to make. So don't fall for that. You know, when they say, oh, where are the hills? You call that a hill? So what? I'm not supposed to ride because the road's flat? I mean, get real. There are a lot of riders that live in hilly areas that look for flat roads just to change the training. You guys know what I'm talking about, those of you who live in hilly areas. There are times when you don't want to deal with hills that day, and you go to an area where you can get slightly flat to rolling terrain. You know, we have hills out here. There are areas where you can go and do repeats on hills if that's your thing. I don't really care for that. I like the variety that we have. I wouldn't want to live in a place where I'm either climbing or descending all the time. You get tired of that. You get tired of the same stuff. So if you have that, I'm sure if you ride a lot, there are days where you don't want to deal with up and down, and you go to another part of town or another side of town, and you go and do the plains one day. We used to do that in Austin. The east side of Austin is flat. You do that on certain days. The west side of Austin is up and down. You do that when you're doing your hill work. So when people come to the channel and make those kind of comments, I just laugh because it's clear they haven't been riding for any appreciable amount of time. Because every terrain matters. You need to be able to handle all of them. They all matter. They all need to be in your repertoire. Don't look down on any of them. Whatever event you're preparing for is what drives what you need to prepare in. So if you're preparing for a hilly area, do some hills, but don't just do only hills, because that would make you limited. If all you're doing, if all you can do is climb, then what happens when you need to descend really well or chase somebody on the flats? You got to be able to do it all. It's the all-arounders that win the big races, you know, within reason. The specialists have certain days where they shine, you know, but you can't just limit yourself and then say, oh, well, I'm a lightweight guy, because one of the comments was, oh, all of you look, most of the guys in the ride look like they weigh 84 kilograms. I don't know how you can tell by looking, but I'm like, so what's the point? Is there a particular weight for cycling? So it just told me that this is a new person to the sport and is not humble enough to be willing to learn, want to act like you already know, and it just comes across. And people like those, you can't teach them. They're not ready to learn. So needless to say, I did not respond to that comment, and I'm just pointing it out. Use what you have nearby. You don't need to be taking hours out of your day to drive somewhere unless you're preparing for a specific event, and you won't do that every day anyway. You will pick one day, like a hard day, and you go and do that specific course for your event. But your easy days or your endurance days, you do different terrain. The variety makes it interesting. Don't make yourself get stale. So even though these areas that we're riding are similar, we do different things all the time. We approach them differently. That's why I can ride in the same part of town and still have fun, because you don't have to go hammer hills all the time. So I feel very fortunate to be in an area that has a lot of variety of terrain, because I've been there. I've done that with the climbing every day. You know, where you just out of the gate. I lived at the base of a 7% climb in Austin, Texas, and it was just a pain. I used to walk my bike sometimes just to get out of my subdivision to start riding, because I didn't feel like riding that hill out the door. So at this point of the ride here, I decide I'm gonna drift to the back, because I had just pulled and then I moved up to the front. And so I stayed back here. I think Paul stays in front of me where he's turning the camera. Yeah, Michael's talking about my shoes. He said he liked the black and orange, and you know, I just told him, yeah, they work really well. They're several years old. You know, they look good because I put protective film on my shoe. I'll probably do a video about that down the road. I don't know how interested people will be in that, but I basically take my shoe to another level and protect all the high traffic areas with the 3M film, so they're not visible. They're cut to fit. It's like a shield. I do the same thing on my bikes in certain areas. It's called paint protection film made by 3M. Helicopter tape, some people refer to them as. But it keeps the heavy traffic areas, like when you're clipping in and so forth, from getting all scuffed up. The shoe ends up looking decent. So you get a 3-year-old shoe that looks like it's a year old or less. So Alan takes off through the light. Paul Moore is behind him. Paulie Longa has the camera here, and this is Michael. And that's a heck of a gap. Nobody wanted to get up there and close it. I'm behind them. I'm just watching to see who does what. What ends up happening on some rides is certain people treat the ride like it's a race. So what they do is they don't want to pull, and all they do is sit in and then wait for accelerations to make moves. And that's all good and well, but by leaving this kind of a gap, you're working pretty hard. And I believe Paulie Longa is closing this here. So if you're gonna ride with these guys anywhere, why let the gap open? I intentionally sat back just to see what would happen. And now, why am I talking about that? The way the body works, guys, is that you've probably seen it in races. If you're at the front and you're pulling for miles on end, it's almost like your body is functioning in a different mode. You've got a rhythm. You're tapping into more of your glycogen stores. Whereas the guys that are in the draft, they're working in a lower zone. So the people in the draft have a distinct advantage on a flat road, or even this terrain with slightly rolling roads. So what ends up happening when someone increases or changes the pace, the person at the front has to work a lot harder to respond to that change in pace than the people in the back. That's the whole reason why you have teams, professional teams, sacrificing one or two riders and then to protect the leader before a climb or whatever else. That's just the way the body works. So, and that's all good and well. And a lot of people may not know it technically that way, but they understand that if I stay in the back, I work less on a flat road. Now, some people do that because they're trying to save energy. Some people do that as a matter of strategy, and that's great. But in a group ride, you need to have your own plan, like I always say. So it doesn't really matter whether you pull and then somebody attacks and whether you can go or not. If your plan that day was to increase your ability to handle long sustained efforts, and you are at the front and you pull for a long time, don't worry about the fact that somebody comes around you and gaps you or whatever. Focus on what you're working on that day. That's one scenario. Second scenario could be, okay, I'm gonna sit in the back. Once the pace changes, I will use that time now to work on my ability to handle long sustained efforts. So you could do it both ways. So that's why I tell people, don't worry about, oh, somebody getting dropped in a group ride. It means nothing. You don't know what their plan is that day. Okay? So now, the qualification of that is, if the road is going up, there's not so much of a benefit to being behind. It's mostly the element of surprise if you're behind, but on a climb, everybody has to work. So that only applies, the drafting only applies on a flat road where you get the benefit. If you draft properly, you get the benefit of being behind. So just keep that in mind, and don't stray from what your goal is. Now, if you don't have a goal and your goal is, okay, well, everybody has a goal. Let's say your goal is, I just want to hang with this group and not get dropped. Then what it means is, stay in the back as much as possible, especially if you're not one of the stronger riders, because a strong rider can pull from the front and still respond to changes. You know, that's the way I ride. I don't worry about what's going to come, because if I really want to go, doesn't matter how long I've been at the front, I will take it to the next level and go. So you need to figure out, okay, where are you in your fitness? Are you one of the guys who barely can handle the distance and the effort? Because that's what makes a difference. So you say, okay, I can barely finish 80 kilometers with these guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to pull. If you do come to the front, you pull off right away, you go back. I'm going to sit behind. And all I'm going to do is make sure Alan's pulling off here, Paul Moore's taking over. So you say, all I'm going to do is make sure that I only use my energy so I can finish with these guys. So that's when you stay behind. So your goal for staying behind is now going to be different than someone else's. Now keep in mind that once your fitness improves to where you can comfortably stay with the group for the duration, you have a responsibility now to start taking some pulls. Not only to the group, but to yourself. Because that's the only way you're going to improve. If you just sit in the pack all the time, you will be a one-dimensional rider. You get strong by sticking your nose out in the wind and doing a heavier workload than what you're accustomed to. Because once your body gets used to something and you stay there, it's not going to get stronger. You always got to push yourself. Plus, you should help the group you're riding with. If you're feeling good, take a pull. You don't have to pull as long as anybody else. You do whatever you want. So once you get strong enough, start taking short pulls that won't cause you to get dropped. You got to gauge it. Sometimes you'll make a mistake, but that's okay. People look favorably on riders that contribute to the progress of the group as opposed to what they call wheel suckers. And that's where that phrase comes from. If all you do is sit on the wheels, you'll get badged as a wheel sucker. That is not a favorable name to have, because in a competitive event, you won't get a chance to sit on somebody's wheel for an extended period of time. They will start attacking you if they feel that you don't want to share the work. And it's a double-edged sword, because since all you've been doing is following wheel, when you get attacked, you gotta work. You watch the pros when they're opening up a break and it doesn't matter whether it's a flat road or whatever. They don't attack slowly and they don't stay in a straight line. It's zigzag, meaning you want to get on my wheel, you're gonna fight the wind to get to me. So if you're not used to working that hard, you will never be in a breakaway. You would just be you would sit and watch people ride away. So all this pulling that you see Alan doing, Paul M here doing, they're getting a workout. They're benefiting themselves. Nobody cares what the other people do after they do their pull, but they're getting their bodies accustomed to handling work. So don't just sit in the pack all the time. You will be a weak rider. You need to be able to take your pulls. I don't care who you are. If you're spending more than 50% of the ride sitting in the pack, you're not going to be a strong rider, because when you have to work in the wind, you won't be able to. That's the reason you see people pull. People don't get strong by following other riders. Most of the top riders train mostly alone, and then they go to events. When they're riding with the team, it's just a long, steady ride, whatever. When I say train, I'm talking about high zone training, higher zones. They work out alone because everybody's different. If you never taste the wind with a hard effort, you will not be prepared. So Paul M pulled for a long time here, and now we're coming downhill, and this is the area where we get all mixed up with the wrong messages, I call it, because somebody calls out left, and then someone counters with a second call for left. Paul said left himself because it was being passed up to the front. The problem is we never turn left here. So now watch right here. Dan almost hit Paul because he was coming down so fast. Paul was slowing down. That's what you don't see it. I'm behind him.
He said left.
So I had to switch to the left to avoid Paul.
Scream left then.
That's what he said. Somebody said left, and so I waved him up because the people that said left went straight.
Following the command, I heard left. Yeah, I saw it.
So it was close because Dan almost collided with him because Paul was slowing down on the right and Dan was on the far right. Michael had said left because he said he heard left. But the thing is, he said left and then continued to go straight. So why pass down a message you're unsure of? So when you're in the group, don't repeat a message you're not sure about. Because you can see right here, they're going straight. Nobody signaled to go left. Somebody said left. That's why I suspect that maybe one of those riders from the group that latched onto our back, maybe they normally turn left over there, and they had called up ahead left. But we don't turn there. So when you give the wrong directions in a group, you can cause problems. So it was a near miss there when Dan came down the hill. And so right here, I moved to the front to close up to those guys. So, I was a little surprised by it. This is the guy from the other group I was talking about in the pink jersey that ended up riding with us to Taco Corner and back. Because I didn't see the rest of the group. So they must have turned left over there or were off our pace. I didn't look back. I didn't see anybody that close. But this is where we turn. We don't turn on that street. That is another option, but we don't use that. Michael's all over the road because nothing's coming. He looked behind. There's a car coming down. So people call car up as we turn for the rest of the riders behind us. So right here, I end up backing off the power a little bit so Paul and I can talk, because what happened was, even though it was close where Dan went by, because Paul held a straight line, an inexperienced rider would have been hit. Paul held a straight line, so Dan had enough room to get by Paul, because Paul was moving to the right. But because Paul was doing it gradually, Dan was able to get by. But once Dan got by, Paul came back in my line, and I was coming up on him. So that's why I said, why are you slowing down? Because I ended up having to slow down and move left to avoid him. And I actually ended up calling out to Paul to let him know I'm on your left. And that's why I asked him. I was surprised he was slowing down. That's what we're talking about here. And this is the other thing I talk about. Now, all these guys, this guy, he doesn't ride with us that often, so he doesn't know. So these guys are riding, and then what ends up happening is the camera makes it look further than it is. Paul and I are just kind of rolling because we're talking. And so what I don't do is expend a lot of energy to chase them. I just keep my pace even. And you can see, look at the speeds. We're doing 30, 31, 32 miles an hour. This is a downhill, like a -2 downhill, nothing drastic. But because the winds are light, we've got, the ability to get up to a decent speed. One thing you want to do is don't get too excited when you get gapped. Just ride. Alan comes by on his time trial bike. I'm not going to change my pace. I know this terrain. It's going to go up. I just keep the pace steady, and I know I'm going to ride up to them because they yo-yo more than I'm doing. And you'll see it develop here. It comes from knowing that I can catch them. And that's another thing that makes you relax. Like, it comes with experience. Once you know what you're capable of doing, you don't get excited. You don't panic. So, there are just certain things that being on the road will help you. I call Paul up so we can talk. I don't back off the effort, though. We're going to talk and ride. We're at my sweet spot right now. So we're still riding up to them. We're going to catch up to them at the corner. Because now they're resting because they were expending all that energy with those sharp accelerations. That takes a lot out of you. That's the reason road racers ride like that. They sacrifice other riders. Those bursts of speed takes a lot out of you. You can see right at the corner, we're there. And I tell Paul, stay close. That's how you can save energy. I was riding like a diesel back there instead of a Ferrari. Doesn't mean I can't do it, but this is not the time. We're 38 minutes into the ride. It's not the time. When it's early, everybody's excited. Everybody's fresh. I like to go when it's 3 hours into a 5-hour ride, or after the 2.5-hour mark. Then everybody's feeling it. And camera's trying to keep up with my light, because that light is a lot more vibrant than the camera. The lens speed cannot keep up with the amount of flashes that thing gives. This is the best I've seen it. I love that light. It blends, it fits into that saddle very unobtrusively. This is hard. We're going up a grade. It says 1% now. It's a little more than that. This is a grade, and the wind's picking up now. It's a little later in the morning. You can hear it. So this is a grind here. But it's the same effort I was holding back there. This is why I was saying that I knew what would catch these guys. That's why you have to save your energy. Because right now the road's going up and somebody's pressing on the pedals. I mentioned the thing about the miscommunication because that's how wrecks happen. You don't have to be going very fast. If somebody thinks you're turning right and the other guy thinks you're going straight, that's how riders meet. One guy's going straight, the other guy's turning. Boom, you have a crash. So you gotta let your fellow riders know. That's why I like to use the hand signals. Sometimes when you speak on a ride with the wind, it's not well understood by riders further back from where you are. They just hear a sound. They don't really understand clearly unless they're close to you. It's better to just point. You can say left turn, right turn if you're right behind a rider who is leading you and you're like in second or third position and you're giving them directions. Yeah, you can do that. But it's not for the whole group. For the whole group, point. So the rider's further back. The bigger the group, the more you want to point. Because the other riders just hear yelling. They just hear a noise. They don't know what's going on. Because Michael told Paul that I heard somebody say left, so I just said left. But then he went straight. so that's what we laughed about it later. But at the time it happened, it was like, I was trying to understand why Paul was slowing down, and then he told me, you guys heard him. He's like, I heard left, So if you're not sure about the message, don't pass it on. I think around here, I asked Paul if he's doing okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask is because every time the road goes up, these guys get excited. So I know we're going to be pressing on the pedals. You can hear the wind. And right here, the road begins to spike. And all I do is I just put more force into the pedals. That's the benefit of a great saddle position, a bike fit. Because if you're not fitted well, what will end up happening, you start scooting around looking for a spot to apply the power. That's why a lot of riders have their saddles tilted down because it's too high. And then they start sliding forward and they're moving around. Every time you're doing that, you're wasting energy. That's why their hands get numb and all of that. All I do is nothing changes. I just push harder and pull up. That's it. I anchor myself on the saddle. So now right there we crest the hill and the power's off. You can see I was just kind of soft pedaling there. See, when I ride these hills solo, I don't coast here. I ride. I shift up and I ride. So for me, when they do this is a rest. And I just save the energy for something later. Now we're going again. I keep my cadence anywhere between 80 to 100 when I'm with riders that are attacking a hill. If I'm riding solo, I get in a big gear, and big is relative. I get in a gear I need, and I keep my cadence in the mid-80s to maintain a steady effort. But when the effort's changing on a climb, I don't stay in the mid-80s. I snap it up when I need to accelerate without using up too much of my glycogen stores. The road is kind of damp because of all the moisture around. You can see it, and so when we take the corner, we slowed down quite a bit. And I even told them to be careful. It's better to slow down on these damp roads because they're slippery since you haven't had hard rain. It's just been light rain. And that's another reason I have the mud guards on, because the road is damp, and so you get all that spray on your shoes from the front wheel particularly. The road doesn't have to be wet for you to get dirty. Just a little bit of moisture will pick up all the dirt and the sand or whatever and flick it up your back. You get that little trail of dirt on your shorts. So you want to do some serious riding. You want to not be restricted by the weather. Those mud guards are just perfect. Once they're set up, the initial setup is fiddly. I made a video about it. I'm telling Alan to just not spend too much time at the front here. He gave me a thumbs up. He said, I know. So, but what I was saying about the mud guards is, once they're set up, you can move them from bike to bike easily. And it takes a few seconds to just snap them on and they're in place. And they really weigh next to nothing. There's a car coming around, so I told him he was coming around. I don't just say car back. I let them know he's coming around so they know he's going to be on your side. Stay over. In that situation, I want to let them know this person's coming around. You can see the road going from dry to wet, dry to wet. You got to be really cautious on these kind of roads, especially where we're going to turn. They're under the canopy of trees. They don't dry as quickly. We'll have rains during the night. So I tell them, be careful. You can see the road is wet here, it's damp. That's why it's kind of gray. And then you can see the lighter, dried areas in the middle there. So you have to be careful. You can slide out if you lean your bike too much. So we slow down and then pick it back up. It's better to do that and stay upright than to leave skin on the road. That's the one thing about the wet. And now, after a heavy round of rain, you don't have that issue anymore. The heavier the rain, it washes the film of dirt off the roads, and then you actually end up having better traction. And because it was going to rain, I took 5 psi out of the front and rear of my tires. Gives you more traction. So instead of 90-95, I did 85-90. Didn't really feel that much of a difference as far as my rolling, but I didn't have any problems with my traction. So we're pressing on the pedal. We're moving here on rolling terrain. It's windy, and we're doing almost 23 to 24 miles an hour regularly. So these guys didn't care that the roads were going up. It was a hard ride out. We ended up with a lot of people bailing on the group. You'll see it right here. John had taken a long pull on Fish Creek, and all these accelerations in the hills got to him. You'll see. He'll wave me by in a little while. I'm behind John and Paul's behind me. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need to know when you're at your limit and you're riding above your head, that's okay to pull out of the group so you can stay in form and under control. That's Dan pulling out. Dan was the guy I was following, I think it was last week, where I had the low pressure tires. I had to let go. He was sprinting up a climb. So right there, John waved me through. I just rolled through. I didn't change my effort. You don't want to panic. I don't need to get there right this second. I'm pretty much right there. I just roll. You don't need to get excited. when it's hard, when you're going really hard, a slight acceleration makes a big difference at the top levels. You don't need to make violent accelerations when you're already up there. It's those slight changes that make the difference. You can see we're riding away from Paul. He's letting us go. The gap's opening. And I think there's a car coming around that corner right there. Paul called it out. But Paul is still relatively close. I think he's about maybe a car length or so. The camera makes it a little further. But then right there, we start to ride a little further away from him. We've been riding hard the entire time from Fish Creek. There was no warm-up that much. That's Dan rolling past Paul, close the gap. We're within reach. We're probably about a car length or so. So all Paul is doing is backing off slightly. He's still riding, keeping us within range instead of going beyond where he wants to go at this moment based on his fitness and whatever else is going on with him. Those of you who've been watching for a while, you know about his knee. So right there, we kind of pull away. There's a corner there where they stop. So that Paul's turning off the power here, I'm sure. But we are riding hard. I'm in the middle of zone 4. It's close to racing speed we're doing up there. What I call race pace effort. So we've really opened up a bit of a gap on Paul. So they start to slow down at the corner there. You will see Paul catch up real quickly. The power's off. You can see I said 0 RPM on my stats. This is slightly downhill. It's at -0, -1. So we're rolling to the corner. And you can see Paul begins to close the gap. Some of them stop. And I believe I on-clip as well. I'm not sure what they were stopping for. They were intending to wait for certain people, but the guys that we left behind were too far back. So you can see me up there. I don't want to stop really. So Paul doesn't want to stop either. So we roll. I unclip there. He goes by. I go ahead and clip back in. Because I'm not sure what we're stopping for. So my intent is to just kind of roll slowly. So right here we start to roll again. Decide we're just gonna soft pedal till they decide they're done waiting. Because everybody knows where we're going. We're going to Taco Corner, so I figured they'd join us.
Hang it in there, man. I thought they changed the plan.
So we're talking about the information about turning left back there. He said he thought the plan had changed, but that was just the wrong message that was given. So these guys come by. They didn't really pick up any additional riders, so I guess they decided to just go ahead and roll on because nobody else was close. So I ride up to them. At this point, I'm not aware that there's a gap, but there's a gap that's going to start opening really soon. You can hear the wind. So this road is a grade. It's a false flat. It may not register, but it's a false flat. It's going up. And with that wind and the gears we're riding, yeah, you feel it. And then all of a sudden I see that gap. So I thought Neville was gonna move up and close it because he goes by Mark here. Mark let the gap open. So he goes by Mark, but then he backs up, and at this point Alan comes around, so I just jump on Alan's wheel here. All I did was just increase my cadence. And you can see I'm getting my body into it because at this point, the wind and this grade, you feel it. I'm riding like a 5316, which is a big gear for the conditions. And we basically ride away. Paul decides to stay with these guys, but we ride up and we bridge up to those guys. We had to hold about 40 kilometers an hour to bridge up to them. So we're about an eighth of a mile up the road, and we just continue to open the gap here. Neville comes to take the lead among the three of them. And Paul was telling me that he was suggesting to Mark and them just sit on my wheel, and he was going to pull at this pace. The stats you're seeing are my stats where we're up the road. And I went ahead and edited this for time because it was a while. We were up the front. They never caught up. We basically ended up getting to the store before they did. You can see we're in the distance there. In a little while I will freeze it so you can see. So right when you come down the hill here, we're already at the light. You see my cadence says 0. We're slowing down for the light. There we are. And the light changes just as we get there. And the guys continue to force the pace. You will see my cadence pick up, speeds pick up. That road across the highway is an uphill. Mark was trying to get to that light. There we are. Because we caught the light.
And now I'm in a big gear because I couldn't get up.
Paul was telling Mark he was trying to get that light.
Let's move over there.
So they're gonna move to the left because there are cars behind them that want to turn. And they're all the way on the right side of the lane. So they're gonna go closer to the white line here because that's a left turn lane across the line. Just to let these guys turn. This light stays red for a bit. In a little while I speed it up. Do like a short time lapse. And you can see by my stats, we're up the road riding. We're climbing at about 20 miles an hour. It says 1% there, but you know, anywhere from 1 to 3 once you get across this highway here. So they continue to go. We're up the road. We end up getting to the store long before they do. At this point of the ride, I believe Paul takes the lead here as they get through the light. Yeah, he flips the camera behind to get a rear view. And I went ahead and edited this for time because he was sitting here until they made the final, well, the turn before the final turn. So they're basically doing like a steady pace amongst themselves here. Up the road, we're still riding. About probably 2 kilometers before the stop, I let the group go and just decided to spin down. My legs were not feeling particularly great because I had taken off 3 days in a row in the middle of the week and didn't ride consistently, and that always affects how you feel once you get back to riding. I've put on the list to do a video that talks about how rest days affect your form. This is where they're coming to the turn before the final turn. Mark's moved to the front here. The elapsed time on this was a lot longer than you see on here because what I did was just edited it, kept the content the same, and moved things along. You can hear the wind. That's what we're dealing with, and that's why the warnings in the group were not very clear. You can't make out what people are saying if you're several riders back. why hand gestures are best wherever possible. See this climb they're on. My stats are saying 4%. I'm already at the taco corner. I'm stopped, but the taco corner is at 4%. It's on a hill. That's why it just stays at 4%. What they're cresting here is almost 4%. The taco corner is down the street where you see the light in the distance. There's a white light where the station is. That's where they're headed. Where they had turned that corner was where I turned the power off, and it just kind of spun in.
Whew, that was good. Tired, but made it.
At this point, I'm standing over there chatting with, I believe Mark's there. Neville's putting on his cleat covers. I don't bother using those when I'm in an area that's paved like this. We're about ready to go here. We got our bottles loaded, got something to drink. I'm rolling my bike to get ready to go.
Honestly, Dan, I think you would absolutely love it.
I really would. I know I would. It's a dream.
On a day like this, you want those lights. So it still hasn't rained yet, but the forecast said rain's coming. So the consensus is let's head towards town and head back in to try to avoid the worst of it. We weren't very successful, as you'll see.
Well, the thing is that you stop, and then you got to go again. Sometimes your body's not ready.
Yeah.
You know, so that was one of the reasons I wanted to just kind of keep rolling.
So Paul and I discussing some of the things that occurred during the ride, and especially after the stop back on that highway. That's what we're talking about. We always walk through things that happen, so we're rolling out here. We're leaving the taco corner. They call this place Taco Corner. I explained in another video because they make tacos in there. I mean, it's a convenience store that happens to have a kitchen that makes tacos. So, the name is not necessarily called Taco Corner. I guess the guys just call it that. I didn't see it on the sign or anything. I've never sampled the tacos. I can't eat that kind of stuff when I'm riding. We're gonna be turning left at the top of the hill there, and I'm keeping my eye on the traffic. There's a bunch of cars coming. So I let the guys know it's clear for us to turn. That's Greg coming the opposite way. I waved to him. Greg shot. He rode with us the prior week. That's Alan and I up here. Paul's behind us. Headed south. Telling Paul that Greg was across the road, going the other way.
Yeah, I noticed. Gentleman that is related to a dog.
Wind is coming from the east. We're headed south. We're going to turn left, which will be east, and we'll be headed directly into the wind. So I tell Alan here that we're turning left. And as soon as we turn, you feel the wind hitting you in the face. That's Michael right there on the right. He's using the wind to slow down as we go down this slight downhill. I didn't get the name of the guy in the pink. This is the guy who abandoned his group and jumped on our group. I guess he liked this pace better. He was the one that was early in the ride with those guys that we passed on 2978. This is a good view from the front. Dan in the back there, about 4 riders back. Dan has the same Cyclery 600 that I have, the one I did the review on. He got it after I did the review. You see Dan sliding on the right here? He's using the wind to slow himself down so he doesn't have to use his brakes. Because we're going down a descent here, and now it's going to go uphill, so the speed will drop. We're not really riding hard. It's kind of like zone 2 for me, but with the conditions, the uphill said 2% a little while ago, uphill into the wind, you have to work. And this stretch of this Lone Star Parkway, this road is called, is up and down. I'll let them know it's clear. We roll through, you can hear the wind. All I'm doing is I'm keeping my gear reasonable, because once we get down the road and we pass the intersection down there, immediately the road goes up and it's a long climb. And then with this wind, I want to make sure that I don't overtax my legs here. So I keep everything steady. I'm right in what I call sweet spot area. Sweet spot zone, bottom of zone 4. I figure if anybody doesn't like the pace, they'll come around. But nobody was interested at this point. Everybody was saving it because after the light, they go crazy. You'll see in a little bit. I edited this for time because I was sitting up there for quite a while. We're getting closer to the highway at Highway 105, and this road is called Lone Star Parkway. So that long descent that we enjoyed on the way out here is now going to be a climb with all this wind going on. I think as soon as I get to the corner, the light changes, which is rare for this intersection. And then there's a guy that we met at the store. He didn't start out with us. He rode with us a few weeks back. He lives east of here. He takes off up the hill. I just keep my pressure the same. I want to see what everybody else is going to do. There's Michael going there, then Dan. I pick it up a little bit. That guy's name is Dan also. We have two guys named Dan. Dan and Mark go, so I get on Mark's wheel. This is the guy that joined us from the other group earlier in the ride, and Paul's behind him. And all I do is I basically increase my cadence. I'm on the small chainring at this point, in the middle and the back. You can see that they didn't go that far, so that's why I keep it in the small chainring and I get my cadence near 100. Because once we crest this steep pitch, we've got more to do. There's a lot of wind and this road continues. So I think in a little while I'll put it in the big chain ring. Let me see if I can tell. I might already be the big chain ring. Whoever was pressing on the pedals, stop pressing on the pedals. There he is on the right. And so if you want to play, what you would do is after he slows down, there you go. You launch a counterattack or something. I like to go after there's been several accelerations by different people. But people think they get a chance to catch their breath. And it takes a bit of time for them to react when you do that. Like you counter the counterattack. Sometimes it's easier said than done. Depends on how you feel. I'm sitting a little to the right because the wind's blowing from the left. It's kind of swirling all around, but mostly to the left. Still got my cadence up, and there we go. Somebody accelerates again. Yeah, because this is a slight grade again, and I just rev the cadence. I don't change gears. I just turn whatever I'm in faster. Pretty soon we'll start feeling the rain in our faces. Look at the road on the right. It's a little damp. The middle's dry. But where we're riding now here, this part's dry. So we got these scattered showers, but now they're getting more organized. In about a couple of kilometers, you actually see the raindrops. So Dan came from up the front, slipped in front of Alan. The wind's kind of swirling around right now. If you notice, I'm next to the white line because that feels like the best spot to be in. And usually that tells you there's something changing in the weather, because the wind is not coming from any one consistent location right now. So something's blowing in. Did you see Alan? Alan looked like he got blown when that truck went by. He's riding those 808 zip wheels, and the crosswind will affect that. He was telling us at the end of the ride where we had encountered this storm. It was very windy during the storm, and he said it took everything he had to keep that bike straight. Now I'm on the right in front there. I'm staying over to the right. I think the wind has shifted to the left more. I believe we're going to be turning in a little while because we're going to take Raven Chapel. We'll tell mail route to Raven. Yeah, here's the rain. The rain's coming here. And for me, the last thing I want is to pick up the spray from the other riders. You can see the rain, big droplets. This is just the beginning of we're riding literally into the storm. Not sure why Michael is drifting back here. So we're turning left here, but it's a little busy from the other direction. It's raining. So when we turn here, I go ahead and I let Dan know that we're going to just hang back because we're not going to deal with this spray. You can see the water all on the camera lens. At least that's from the rain. But if you follow these guys with no mud guards, it gets on you, your jersey. This is where I tell Dan we're going to hang back and stay out of the spray. Because I've got a pair of mud guards. Paul has a pair of mud guards. So Alan stays with us. And when Alan goes in front, we don't follow him closely. Because the water from the road is your enemy. That's what gets you dirty. The rain itself is not a problem. So we let them go here. That's Neville. I didn't know he was back there. So this is just the beginning. It gets much heavier. It rains so hard that we really could not even film.
In the rain, it is raining hard. Gotta make sure this camera is clean. The lens is clean. The rain has slowed down a little bit, but it's been raining hard. Make this lens clean.
We stopped and put on our shoe covers. So we're wearing our shoe covers at this
We
point.
went ahead and let the group go because they don't have mud guards. And this way I can sit behind Paul. And we're not following Alan closely either.
So yeah, we rode back in, just the three of us, and the rain and wind continued to
There's
intensify.
no reason to let anything stop you. Get out there, get your casing.
We couldn't use our glasses or anything. It got much heavier than this, so we ended up taking a break and stopping at an exxon to let the worst of it pass, because there was thunder and lightning later. But once it died down, we continued and wrapped up the ride. So I hope you all got a chance to get out there and get your K's in and keep those doctors fired. It was an epic ride. I really enjoyed the rain.